Greetings, my name is Ashley, and I'm 32 years old. About 5 years ago, I tied the knot with the most wonderful person I've ever met, Bobby. He's a kind-hearted and fun-loving soul who never fails to make me feel special every single day. However, I can't say the same about his mother, Catherine, my mother-in-law. From the very beginning, she seemed to have an issue with me. I understand that Bobby is her cherished son, and she wants to protect him from any harm. She appears to be looking out for his interests, but her actions often go too far. Catherine has a knack for annoying the guise of innocence, pushing buttons to provoke a reaction, and then playing the victim. This behavior is something many of us might recognize in someone we know, and unfortunately for me, this person is my mother-in-law. My upbringing was different, emphasizing honesty and confrontation over silent tolerance. This trait, among others, is what attracted Bobby to me. He's more reserved and gentler, which complements my outspoken nature. They say opposites attract, and in our case, it rings true. My background in life coaching gives me insight into human behavior, and it's clear to me that Catherine, despite her claims, does not have good intentions. Our strong personalities clashed, which likely contributed to an uncomfortable encounter during our first meeting. We were at a dinner table with Bobby, his dad, Jeffrey, and Catherine. Out of nowhere, Catherine commented on my eating habits, suggesting I should eat less. The comment was so unexpected that everyone at the table was shocked into silence. I was mortified, turning pale with embarrassment. Jeffrey looked down, sharing in my discomfort, while Bobby, upset and embarrassed on my behalf, confronted his mother. Catherine tried to backpedal, claiming she meant no harm and was just offering advice based on her observations of my past photos shared by Bobby. She implied I had looked better in the past, supposedly not intending to offend but to offer advice. Despite my efforts to stay calm and not create a scene, especially since it was my first time meeting Bobby's family, I couldn't help feeling irritated by Catherine's remark, which was both embarrassing and inappropriate. Keen to make a memorable impression, especially since I deeply adored Bobby, I found myself biting my tongue for the first time in a long while during that awkward dinner. In the face of Catherine's unwelcome advice, I managed nothing more than a polite smile and a thank you, burying my frustration and disbelief. As time passed, these uncomfortable encounters with Catherine became more frequent and intense. I held on to hope that once she saw how much I cared for her son and his happiness, she might ease off. Unfortunately, the opposite happened. Her antagonism only seemed to grow. Meanwhile, my relationship with Bobby's father, Jeffrey, blossomed. He was incredibly kind, and it was clear Bobby had inherited his gentle nature. The more I got to know Bobby's family and friends, including his childhood buddy Wayne, who was like a second son to Jeffrey and Catherine, the more welcomed I felt. Everyone, from his immediate to his extended family and his friends like Wayne, seemed to accept and support me with open arms. Everyone except Catherine. I was incredibly thankful for the warmth and support I found within Bobby's family circle. This support was a constant up to and including our wedding day, despite Catherine's best efforts to sour the occasion. She couldn't resist causing drama, attempting to dictate how I should look and even outright insulting me in front of my bridal party. She suggested my hair should mimic hers from her wedding day and went as far as to call me ugly when I expressed my preference. Though she tried to backtrack on her harsh words, the damage was done. It was not surprising given her past behavior, but it still stung. Catherine even compared herself to me, backhandedly complimenting me while simultaneously praising her youthful beauty. Thankfully, Jeffrey intervened, putting an end to Catherine's attempts to overshadow the day. Despite his efforts, the hurt from her actions lingered. It was against my nature to remain silent in the face of such treatment. Yet the love and acceptance from the rest of Bobby's family helped me navigate these challenges. Feeling my vibrant energy fade, it became clear that Catherine's negative influence was taking a toll on me, and I knew something needed to change. Fast forward to 5 years later, a significant day unfolded at Bobby's childhood home, where his parents still resided. On a Sunday evening, Catherine had extended an invitation for dinner to us, including Bobby's lifelong friend Wayne, signaling an important announcement was on the horizon. Despite my initial skepticism about her motives for organizing this dinner, what transpired was beyond what I had anticipated. The evening took an unexpected turn when Catherine captured everyone's attention to share her big news. With a flourish, she announced plans for a birthday celebration in Florida, waving a confirmation letter for the trip. The announcement was met with excitement from everyone around the table. "That's incredible," Bobby exclaimed, his face lighting up with the prospect of visiting Florida, a place he had always dreamed of going. The room buzzed with excitement as everyone chimed in with their enthusiasm, grateful for such a generous gesture. However, the mood shifted dramatically when Catherine turned to me and bluntly stated, "Oh, actually, you're not coming." Confusion and disbelief filled the room. Bobby, taken aback, insisted this wasn't part of the plan. It was revealed that Catherine had deliberately canceled my ticket, citing last-minute arrangements to avoid extra charges. The revelation that my participation had been considered and then revoked without any prior discussion left me stunned and hurt. Questions and protests erupted, with Wayne and I remaining silent observers amidst the growing tension. After much pressing for an explanation, Catherine reluctantly admitted her reasoning for excluding me from the family event. She expressed a desire to spend her later years surrounded by those she felt closest to, explicitly stating, "I did not make that list." This declaration sparked immediate outrage, particularly from Bobby, who couldn't comprehend his mother's harsh stance. The argument escalated when Bobby pointed out the inconsistency in Catherine's logic, mentioning Wayne's inclusion in the trip despite not being related by blood. This comparison highlighted the absurdity of excluding me on such grounds, revealing the deep-seated bias Catherine harbored. This moment underscored the blatant favoritism and unfair treatment I faced, casting a shadow over the family dynamics and challenging the very notion of what it means to be considered a family. In that heated moment, when Catherine tried to justify excluding me from the family trip by pointing out my relatively recent addition to the family compared to Wayne, whom she affectionately referred to as a precious and cherished part of their lives, I reached my breaking point. Despite her attempts to differentiate between me and Wayne, Bobby interjected, emphasizing that marriage had made me as much a part of the family as anyone else. My refusal to leave quietly, pronounced with a firm no, seized everyone's attention, halting Catherine's dismissive smiles and forcing her to confront the reality of her actions. I laid bare the truth of the past 5 years. Catherine's blatant dislike for me, her unbearable behavior, and her narcissistic tendencies were evident to everyone, not just me. Catherine's threat, veiled as a warning to watch my words, did little to silence me. Instead, I declared my imminent departure from a place that had become a battleground rather than a home. But before I left, I made it clear to Bobby, my husband, how much he meant to me. Despite everything, I urged him to join the family trip to Florida, acknowledging the complex bond he shared with his mother, driven by love despite her flaws. Turning to Catherine, I laid out an undeniable truth. Her efforts to push me away would always be in vain. My love for her son tethered me to this family, irrespective of her acceptance. My accusation of her obsession with me struck a nerve, highlighting her relentless attempts to undermine me, despite my consistent kindness and patience. My parting words were a declaration of resilience and independence. While Catherine had decided I wasn't part of the family and didn't wish for my presence in Florida, I affirmed my unwavering position in Bobby's life, and by extension, in the family. I promised to remain a steadfast presence for Bobby, Jeffrey, and even Wayne, drawing a firm line with Catherine. This confrontation was not just a moment of defiance, but a turning point, underscoring my resolve to stand beside Bobby and the rest of the family, regardless of Catherine's machinations. In that moment of silence, as Catherine struggled to find words, I knew I had finally made an impact. Her usual quick retorts were nowhere to be found, leaving her speechless. I took my leave, bidding farewell to the family and sharing a tender moment with Bobby, who offered to drive me home. Despite his concern, I reassured him of my well-being, encouraging him to focus on the family discussion about the trip. Retrieving my purse from the kitchen, I encountered Catherine, who had seemingly retreated there, possibly to collect her thoughts after the confrontation. Her request for me to leave swiftly was expected, echoing her earlier sentiments with an added layer of animosity. Unfazed, I proceeded to grab my purse, only to notice a letter beside it, unmistakably in Catherine's handwriting. Initially, I assumed it was related to the Florida trip, and driven by a mix of curiosity and spite, I decided to glance at it. The letter, addressed to Wayne, began with affectionate words, portraying a deep bond between them. As I read further, the content took an unexpected turn, revealing Catherine's feelings of a diminished love for her son Bobby, in contrast to her enduring affection for Wayne. This revelation was shocking, suggesting a preference for Wayne over her son. Compelled by the letter's contents, I was caught between the impropriety of reading someone else's correspondence and the urgency of the revelations it contained. The letter shed light on underlying family dynamics that were far more complex than I had imagined. Realizing the significance of this discovery, I knew it couldn't be ignored. The weight of this information and its potential impact on the family dynamics led me to consider my next steps carefully. With everyone who needed to be aware of the letter's existence gathered in the house, I was faced with a critical decision on how to proceed, knowing that the contents of this letter could change everything. Now was undoubtedly the moment for decisive action. After scrutinizing the letter once more, just to confirm I hadn't misread or misunderstood its contents, the words remained unchanged. It was as significant and shocking as it had seemed at first glance. With the letter in hand, I returned to the dining room, immediately capturing the attention of the few who remained. Jeffrey, ever the peacemaker, was quick to extend an olive branch, apologizing for Catherine's behavior and reassuring me that I would be joining them in Florida. He attributed Catherine's actions to a temporary mood, confident he could persuade her to reconsider. However, his assurances weren't necessary. I had stumbled upon something far more pressing, a revelation that needed to be shared with Bobby, Wayne, and Jeffrey. The concern in Bobby's eyes was palpable, likely fearing that the recent events and the strain of dealing with his mother had pushed me to a breaking point. Our conversations about Catherine had often ended with him marveling at my patience and resilience, motivated by the deep love I held for him, a love that I assured him was strong enough to withstand any adversity. Catherine's absence was conspicuous, and when I inquired about her whereabouts, Jeffrey explained she had retreated to nurse a headache, presumably a consequence of our earlier confrontation. While her tendency to prioritize her routines over others was a familiar annoyance, this time it felt like an obstacle. The importance of what I had to reveal warranted her presence, yet I was urged to proceed without her. The urgency in their encouragement, especially considering Bobby's growing anxiety, compelled me to relent. The anticipation and worry etching deeper into Bobby's expression made it clear that delaying any further could only exacerbate his stress. "Okay, fine," I conceded, understanding the weight of the moment. When I was in the kitchen retrieving my purse and preparing to leave, I discovered something quite revealing. The gravity of the situation was not lost on me, nor was the potential impact of the letter's contents on the family dynamics. Sharing this information, initially intended for Catherine's ears as well, now felt like a pivotal turn in the narrative of our family relations. Gathering my resolve, I shared the shocking contents of the letter I discovered with Bobby, Wayne, and Jeffrey. As I read aloud, the words seemed to hang heavily in the air, revealing Catherine's deep-seated resentment towards me and the drastic actions she planned to take against her son in favor. The letter detailed her preference for Wayne over Bobby, her decision to disinherit Bobby in favor of Wayne, and her unfounded blame placed on me for the supposed rift in her relationship with her son. The revelation was jarring, painting a picture of Catherine's bitter feelings and her readiness to sever ties with Bobby because of me. As I finished, the room was enveloped in a thick tension, each person processing the betrayal and hurt in their way. Jeffrey, a portrait of despair, seemed on the brink of tears. Wayne was visibly shocked, unable to grasp the full extent of Catherine's plans, but Bobby, overtaken by a storm of emotions, was the picture of fury and disbelief. Bobby's reaction was a mix of hurt and indignation, struggling to understand how his mother could attribute her drastic decisions to her disdain for me. It was a moment of harsh realization for all of us, confronting the extent of Catherine's manipulation and spite. The ensuing discussion was charged with emotion, with Bobby declaring his frustration with his mother's vindictive behavior. It was clear something had to be done about the toxic environment Catherine was cultivating. 3 weeks passed in the wake of this revelation, leading up to the day of the much-anticipated Florida trip. Unbeknownst to Catherine, a plan had been set in motion, a direct response to her divisive actions. On the morning of the departure, Catherine discovered a letter from Jeffrey by her bedside. It was a message of feigned normalcy, instructing her to meet the family at the airport, suggesting everything was proceeding as planned. With her belongings supposedly ready and waiting, Catherine hurried to the airport, filled with anticipation for the trip that she had orchestrated, not realizing the underlying dynamics that had shifted so significantly in the wake of her letter's discovery. Her search for her family at the airport was frantic, a physical manifestation of the confusion and isolation that her actions had sown within her own family. Catherine attempted to reach out to her family, assuming their silence was due to already being aboard the plane. Rushing to catch her flight, she held on to the hope of reuniting with them in Florida. After enduring the lengthy journey, she eagerly video called Jeffrey, expecting to kick off the celebrations together. However, the reality waiting for her was starkly different. Jeffrey broke the news that they hadn't gone to Florida at all. They were still at home. The reveal was made even more dramatic as Jeffrey showed Catherine the gathered family, all of whom were present at the house, a stark reminder of the unity she had tried to disrupt. Catherine's confusion turned to shock as Jeffrey explained the change of plans, citing the revelations brought to light by the letter she had intended for Wayne. Her attempts to cut Bobby out of her will, motivated by her unfounded animosity towards me, had backfired spectacularly. As Catherine scrambled for explanations and denials, the family collectively dismissed her lies, underscoring the irreversible damage her actions had caused. The discovery of the letter in the kitchen, which she tried to deny, only further sealed her fate in the eyes of her family. The confrontation culminated in a unanimous decision by the family. Catherine's divisive and hateful actions had led to her isolation, even on her birthday. The family hoped that her time alone in Florida would offer her a chance for introspection and realization of the gravity of her actions. The unity and solidarity shown by Bobby, Jeffrey, Wayne, and me in the face of Catherine's attempts to divide us underscored a powerful message about the values of family, forgiveness, and the consequences of one's actions. Catherine found herself facing the stark reality of a vacation spent in solitude, a direct consequence of her actions. Her usual demeanor had alienated those closest to her, and now, faced with the prospect of being alone, she began to realize the extent of her missteps. The family's unanimous laughter over the situation was not out of malice, but a release of the tension that had built up over time. Catherine's shock and embarrassment at being called out were evident, marking a rare moment of vulnerability for her. In the aftermath, Catherine reached out to Jeffrey, hoping for his company in Florida, unable to bear the thought of canceling the elaborate plans she had made. However, Jeffrey remained firm in his stance, suggesting that Catherine's return would necessitate a serious discussion about the future of their relationship and the establishment of new boundaries. Catherine's sudden shift to a more conciliatory and remorseful posture was unexpected, showcasing a stark departure from her usual behavior. Bobby, too, made it clear that any future relationship with his mother depended on her willingness to genuinely change her attitude. He set firm boundaries, stating that any further disrespect would lead to him severing ties permanently. Wayne, recognizing the role his kindness may have played in enabling Catherine's behavior, decided to withdraw his affability, further isolating Catherine and highlighting the severity of her situation. Catherine's attempts at reconciliation were met with skepticism. I communicated to her the need for time to consider forgiveness, an indication of the deep wounds her actions had inflicted. Despite her pleas for me to intervene on her behalf with the men in her life, I maintained that the responsibility for mending those fractured relationships rested solely with her. As time has passed, Catherine continues to work towards repairing the damage she has caused, a task made all the more challenging by the trust and respect she has lost. The hope remains that she will learn from this experience, understanding the true value of family and the consequences of her actions.